Hi. So, one thing about reading is I don't like to know what I'm going to do before it happens. So, maybe you guys can help me decide. Would you rather hear about hunger or drugs? I was in Oregon in August of 2018, living on a farm with a beloved group of friends. Summer edged late as we planned a hike to a natural hot spring sheltered by old-growth forest, excited to savor our togetherness in the heat of the earth. Just hours before our departure, we received an alert. The woods were on fire. 20 people had narrowly escaped Cougar Springs by pressing wet towels to their faces. They had run through a 6-foot wall of flame. Waking to fire watch, we drew a circle of water around the house, soaking the perimeter toward its wooden boards and beams. This barrier, like most others, required regular renewal. The water had to be laid again and again, licking a wish for protection, for continuation against the promise of an end. The radio stayed on. Our eyes widened against the frothy orange air. I had grown accustomed to the mountains that bordered the valley. They seemed to hold us in place. But now they had faded away. Behind the haze that was our new limit, a fast encroaching and impossibly soft border that rendered the valley dreamlike, a small and isolated vignette, blurred beyond the detail of any earthly landscape. By the second day, the road had dimmed to a purplish oblong block, adorning an expanse of yellow I anxiously knew to be dry, dormant grass. The air filled with the trees as they were imperfectly consumed. Smoke only exists when combustion is incomplete. We stayed close to the house then, circling the lawn. Thought and action thickened as if the invasion of soot and carbon monoxide had contaminated them too, an oozing traffic that accumulated to torpor, filling my lungs with a heavy wish for sleep as fear and its readiness receded to join the mountains behind the smog. Wood catches fire when it is so hot it begins to come apart. Molecules vibrating with accelerating rapidity snap the bonds that hold them together. Some of the solids transition into volatile gases that fly out and into the atmosphere, compound molecules that break down further into atoms pulled by attraction into recombination with the oxygen in the air. New compound molecules like carbon dioxide and water are created in their joining, while the non-burnable materials from the tree's cells, calcium, magnesium, and potassium, float and fall as ash. This succession of cascading transformations releases energy, fire's characteristic heat and light. Fire is not alive, though it seems like it might be. We say it is hungry because it feels like ourselves. If I ask you, as I ask myself, how does it feel to be used? I might open by saying there is no life without consumption. Cut fish reeks of free water as good butter stinks of grass. Cut here and you'll leak changes, the inebriation of blood with metal, fire, and tar, GHB, receipt paper lubrication, bleach, propolis extract. We have always been breached, built by what is outside. 3,498,000,000 years before humans controlled fire, Earth's earliest life forms evolved membranes to keep their parts in. This we might call the birth of hunger, an inside wants for what is out, and so these beings developed enzymes targeted to the dissolution of molecules that weren't their own, other single-celled organisms they snatched from the primordial seas and incorporated towards their survival. They say these developments were experimental, and that many failures, accidents of self-digestion may have occurred along the way. At some point, one such being absorbed a photosynthetic bacteria through a pucker in its cell wall. Fatefully, it evaded digestion to live inside the transparent body of the larger life form, using water and carbon dioxide to convert the energy of the sun into carbohydrates, releasing the excess sugars it did not itself need into the encompassing organism to sustain its host's life, until ultimately they reproduced together, their offspring likewise held and holding one another. This type of merger happened at least 4 times independently, giving rise to the 4 kingdoms of plants that still live today and photosynthesize nearly all of the edible calories consumed on the earth. The biologist Lynn Margulis was infamous in her time for asserting that symbiotic relationships such as this are as significant a driver of evolution as competition, pointing to our own ancestors' incorporation of a bacteria that evolved into the mitochondria that power our metabolisms and protect us against oxygen's toxicity. Many have used evolutionary biology and its wrong-headed reduction to survival of the fittest to naturalize the machinations of capitalism and the brutal zero-sum loss and gain relationships it engenders. Margulis's alternate framework fortresses a different lineage, one in which cooperation, sudden and ahistorical mergers of once separate skills and fates, triumphs over unilateral existential destruction. Hunger is a kinetic unity that holds the living world, as we do not in ourselves possess the energy we need to live. We are driven to harness it from the outside, eating and breathing ourselves into being. Like a fire, our internal metabolisms use oxygen to release chemical energy, transforming carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins into the vitality we use to grow, to think, and to affect one another. When we expended that energy kinetically to carry ourselves to this shared room tonight, we continued to transfer the radiant energy of the sun to be here together. When a billionaire commissions a climate-controlled bunker to be defended by mercenaries, they too expel the cascading force of the sun and the open potential of the molecules that composite reality to that end. Their fantasy of separation was preceded by others. The violent extraction of living beings and matter, and the subjugation of their vibrancy to the accumulation of severed wealth for the few. All stockpiles are built on a principle of severance that denies the originary truth, that we were all born of another's body, and that we all eat of one another's lives. To be honest, I barely understand what money is. I do know that it is some kind of stand-in for possibility, as it can only exist when there is so much life and so much bread that the great surplus of survival needs a separate, mobile, fast body to hold it. How strange we should all agree to such a great promiscuity of equivalence, when as a people we are otherwise so inimical to other closer correspondences. Like these two people are not the same, and yet they deserve the same access to safety, or health care, or rest in time. As Jaron Lanier wrote, money was the first computation. So the essential questions about money are what they have always been with information systems. What is remembered? What is forgotten? What money forgets. I can't even get started, but let's take just one for comfort now. That a single integer of currency gets used again and again. It is only the accumulation of need and meeting of need that lends abstracted value its spark. It is our needs, our so-called daily repeating deficit that lends us our strength, because if nothing else, we share them in excess of our names, in excess of the artificial atomization of those needs and their meeting by the abstraction of dollars. If we remember what money forgets, that we share our needs in common and can meet them in common, we regain the true vitality of exchange. I like to sit with the garbage because, like me, it is persistent. Garbage is what is left after the wanted has been taken. For most of us living in this narrow band held between the ice of space and the planet's infernal liquid core, it is where our well-being has been placed. And so, let us follow it there and learn to think from the refuse. For in truth, we are wanted. You are used for your attention, your efforts, your touch. I ask you, as I ask myself, how does it feel to be used? In a televised interview, Lynn Margulis chastised her questioner for using business terms like cost-benefit analysis to describe biological processes. She said, "What we don't want to do is name organisms by the outcome of their relationships, asserting that the vivacity of individuals and the bonds between them should never be reduced to their products." Many of us were bred on love, but I remind not all. Are we used in our love? Yes and no. I savor the chance to be of use to my lover, just as I thrill to share this space with all of you now. I do not weigh the thing we make together. It is instead like the effulgence of the sun, freely given without regard for loss. Our epoch has been defined by the wrongful amputation of energetic processes into false intervals by the demand of use, recasting the enormous energy held within just a few biological materials as exploitable fuel, while the prolific creation of novel compounds like carbon dioxide was relegated to the unwatched irrelevance of waste. We are living through the collapse of the false designations of input and output and look and wonder as the chain of transformations does not end. Let us take the fossil fuels as our mascots, liquid, conjoined life transformed by the heat and pressure that animate this planet's body. Strain makes merger, alloys melt. We are most potent when we cannot be separated. As we face each other now, the sun moves through us to the heat in our hands. Its gravity sculpts the tapered tops of flames as its light warms the ocean to create pockets of thermal energy that will someday snap and release as a hurricane. These are continuous, interpenetrating movements that never fall out of relation, no matter their momentary forms. The speed of two hands remembers food stuffed under floorboards and money hidden in cut mattresses. It alone has not been fooled by the chemical acceleration of muscle growth for meat purpose. It remembers what it has always contended against, the time of fire, of hypothermia, of how fast a human can swim under variegated conditions of health and hope. As I wait here with you, who makes me want to inhale and inhale and inhale until I know how long an evening really is, I see these moments redoubled and know that, whatever should happen, someone will have to be there to pay it witness, slowly. And still, I imagine those who are there, whether it be us or them, will greet it with an unpunctured reserve of curiosity, as if that alone were some way of getting through it. Thank you. Katie, no. Eli? B manuscript is next.